There's a clock ticking somewhere in the distance. You can't hear it, but it's there. It started the moment you took your first breath, and it will stop the moment you take your last. Between those 2 points lies everything you will ever be, everything you will ever do, and everything you will ever love. Yet somehow, most of us live as if that clock doesn't exist. We scroll through our phones as if we have infinite mornings. We postpone difficult conversations as if we have unlimited tomorrows. We wait for the perfect moment, the right opportunity, the ideal circumstances, as if time itself is waiting for us to be ready. But time doesn't wait. It never has, and it never will. The ancient Romans had a practice called Memento Mori. Remember, you must die. It wasn't meant to be morbid or depressing. It was meant to be liberating. When you truly understand that your time is finite, that every day brings you closer to your last, something profound shifts in how you see the world. The trivial falls away. The essential becomes clear. The present moment stops being something you rush through to get to the next thing, and starts being the only thing that actually matters. Seneca, the great Stoic philosopher, wrote extensively about this in his letter on the shortness of life. He observed that life isn't short because we don't have enough time. It's short because we waste so much of the time we have. It is not that we have a short time to live, he wrote, but that we waste a lot of it. Think about that for a moment. The problem isn't the length of life, it's how carelessly we spend it. Right now, as you listen to these words, time is passing. This moment, this exact moment, will never come again. The light falling across your room, the thoughts moving through your mind, the feeling of air entering your lungs, all of it is happening once, and only once. In a few minutes, this moment will be nothing but a memory. In a few years, even the memory might fade. Yet here we are, often only half present, our minds already racing ahead to what comes next, or lingering behind on what came before. We live in an age of unprecedented distraction. Our phones buzz with notifications designed to fragment our attention. Social media platforms compete for our time with algorithms engineered to be addictive. We can lose hours scrolling through the curated highlights of other people's lives, comparing our inner reality to their outer performance. We binge-watch series after series, consuming stories about fictional characters living fictional lives, while our own real life, the only life we actually have, passes by unnoticed. But the distractions aren't just digital. We distract ourselves with busyness, filling every moment with activity so we don't have to sit with the uncomfortable truth of our mortality. We distract ourselves with worry, spending precious mental energy on scenarios that may never happen. We distract ourselves with resentment, replaying past hurts as if reliving them could somehow change them. We distract ourselves with planning, always preparing for a future that exists only in our imagination. The ancient Stoics understood something we seem to have forgotten. Death isn't the opposite of life, it's what gives life meaning. Marcus Aurelius, writing in his personal journal that would become known as Meditations, reminded himself daily of his mortality. "You could die today," he wrote. "Let this determine your actions, words, and thoughts." This wasn't pessimism, it was clarity. When you remember that your time is limited, you stop wasting it on things that don't matter. Consider how differently you might live if you truly believed, not just intellectually, but in your bones, that you had exactly 1 year left. Would you spend it scrolling through social media? Would you hold on to grudges? Would you postpone that conversation with someone you love? Would you stay in a job that drains your soul? Would you wait for permission to pursue what matters most to you? The tragedy isn't that we don't know these things intellectually. Most of us understand that life is finite. The tragedy is that we don't live like we know it. We act as if we have unlimited time, unlimited chances, unlimited opportunities to get it right. We tell ourselves someday as if someday is guaranteed. We say not yet as if yet will last forever. But someday is not a day of the week. Not yet is not a place on the calendar. They are illusions we create to avoid the discomfort of living fully in the present moment. They are ways we lie to ourselves about the nature of time and the reality of our situation. Seneca observed that we are incredibly protective of our material possessions, but incredibly careless with our time. If someone tried to take your money, you would resist. If someone tried to take your house, you would fight back. But people take your time every day, through meaningless meetings, through drama and gossip, through requests that serve their agenda but not your purpose, and you let them. You give away hours, days, weeks of your life to things and people that add nothing meaningful to your existence. Nothing belongs to us except time, Seneca wrote. This alone, which is fleeting and elusive, we receive. This alone we can lose. Everything else, your possessions, your status, your achievements, can be taken from you. But time, once spent, is gone forever. You can earn more money, but you cannot earn more time. You can replace what is broken, but you cannot replace what is past. The modern world has made us experts at avoiding this truth. We have created elaborate systems to hide death from view. We speak of people passing away rather than dying. We warehouse the elderly in facilities where we don't have to confront the reality of aging. We use medical technology to extend life at any cost, as if quantity of years could substitute for quality of presence. We have sanitized death, made it clinical and distant, so we can pretend it won't happen to us. But the ancients lived differently. Death was visible, present, acknowledged. They understood that mortality wasn't something to fear, but something to embrace. As a teacher, Epictetus taught that we should begin each day by contemplating what we might lose, not to become anxious, but to become grateful. When you realize that everything you have is temporary, you stop taking it for granted. This doesn't mean living in constant anxiety about death. It means living with constant awareness of life. When you remember that your time with the people you love is limited, you pay attention differently. When you remember that your opportunities to create, to contribute, to experience beauty are finite, you approach them with reverence rather than casualness. Think about the last time you were fully present, not thinking about what you needed to do later, not replaying something that happened earlier, not checking your phone or planning your response to what someone was saying. Just completely there, completely engaged with the moment as it was happening. How long has it been? For many of us, it's been far too long. We have become experts at being elsewhere. We eat meals while watching screens. We have conversations while thinking about other things. We walk through beautiful places while lost in our thoughts. We experience life secondhand, through the filter of our constant mental commentary, rather than directly through our senses and our presence. The Stoics had a practice of negative visualization, imagining the loss of what they valued most. Not to become pessimistic, but to become appreciative. When you imagine losing your health, you notice how miraculous it is to move without pain. When you imagine losing someone you love, you see them more clearly when they're in front of you. When you imagine this being your last day, you stop saving your attention for tomorrow. But we do the opposite. We live as if everything will last forever. We assume our health will always be there, so we neglect it. We assume our relationships will always endure, so we take them for granted. We assume we'll always have another chance, so we don't fully engage with the chances we have now. The word procrastination comes from the Latin procrastinare, meaning to put off until tomorrow. But what if tomorrow doesn't come? What if the conversation you've been meaning to have, the trip you've been planning to take, the creative project you've been intending to start? What if the opportunity for these things passes while you're waiting for the perfect moment? Seneca wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." But we resist endings. We cling to what is familiar, even when it no longer serves us, because endings remind us of the ultimate ending that awaits us all. We stay in relationships that have run their course, in jobs that drain our energy, in patterns of thinking that limit our growth, because change requires us to acknowledge that time is passing and that we cannot go back. Yet endings are not the enemy of life. They are what make life precious. If you knew you would live forever, would anything really matter? If you had infinite time, would you ever feel urgency about pursuing what you love? If relationships lasted forever, regardless of how you treated them, would you invest in them with care and attention? The finite nature of existence is not a bug in the system. It's a feature. It's what creates meaning, urgency, preciousness. A sunset is beautiful, partly because it doesn't last. A moment of connection with another person is meaningful partly because such moments are rare. An experience of joy or wonder or love is significant partly because we know it will pass. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that he was just a temporary arrangement of atoms, destined to return to the elements from which he came. This wasn't nihilism, it was perspective. When you zoom out far enough, most of what we worry about becomes insignificant. The embarrassing thing you said last week, the mistake you made last month, the failure you experienced last year, in the context of a finite life, do these things deserve the mental energy you're giving them? At the same time, when you zoom in close enough, everything becomes significant. The way light falls across someone's face when they're talking to you, the feeling of your feet on the ground as you walk, the taste of water when you're truly thirsty, the sound of laughter, the silence between words. These moments, these tiny experiences that make up the texture of a life, they become precious when you remember they won't last forever. We spend so much time preparing to live that we forget to actually live. We get the education, so we can get the job, so we can make the money, so we can have the security, so we can finally relax and enjoy life. But life is happening during the preparation. Life is happening while you're getting ready for life to begin. The ancient Greeks had two words for time, chronos and kairos. Chronos is clock time, minutes, hours, days, years. It's quantitative, measurable, finite. Kairos is the right time, the opportune moment, the time when something meaningful happens. It's qualitative, experiential, eternal. We spend most of our lives in chronos, watching the clock, counting the days, measuring our progress. But we live in kairos, in those moments when time seems to stop, when we're so present that we forget about time altogether. These moments of kairos can't be scheduled or planned. They arise when we're fully engaged with what's in front of us, when we're listening so completely to someone that we forget ourselves, when we're so absorbed in an activity that hours pass like minutes, when we're so moved by beauty that we stop thinking and just experience. These are the moments that make a life worth living. and they're available to us right now, in this moment, if we're willing to be present for them. But presence requires courage. It requires the courage to face reality as it is, rather than as we wish it were, or fear it might become. It requires the courage to feel our feelings fully, rather than numbing them with distractions. It requires the courage to be vulnerable, to love knowing that loss is inevitable, to invest in what matters, knowing that nothing lasts forever. Seneca observed that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. We spend enormous amounts of mental energy worrying about things that might happen, most of which never do. We replay past events, trying to change them through the sheer force of our attention. We project into the future, trying to control outcomes that are largely beyond our influence. All of this mental activity takes us away from the only place where life actually happens. Right here, right now. The present moment is the only moment you actually have. The past exists only in memory, and memory is notoriously unreliable. The future exists only in imagination, and imagination is largely fantasy. But this moment, this breath, this heartbeat, this sensation of being alive, this is real. This is where your life is actually happening. Yet we treat the present moment like a waiting room, a place to endure while we wait for something better to come along. We scroll through our phones to pass the time, as if time were something to be gotten through rather than something to be experienced. We multitask, trying to do several things at once, as if efficiency were more important than presence. We rush through our days, always heading somewhere else, as if the journey were less important than the destination. The Stoics taught that we cannot control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond to what happens to us. This is true not just for major life events, but for every moment of every day. You cannot control whether you get stuck in traffic, but you can control whether you use that time to practice patience or to cultivate frustration. You cannot control whether someone treats you kindly, but you can control whether you respond with kindness or with defensiveness. You cannot control how much time you have left, but you can control how you spend the time you have. This is perhaps the most radical idea in all of philosophy, that your experience of life is largely determined not by what happens to you, but by how you choose to interpret and respond to what happens to you. Two people can experience the same event and have completely different experiences of it, based on their perspective, their expectations, their mental habits, their level of presence. When you truly understand this, you realize that you have more power than you thought. You cannot control the external circumstances of your life, but you can control your internal response to those circumstances. You cannot add years to your life, but you can add life to your years. You cannot prevent loss, but you can choose how to love in the face of inevitable loss. The fear of death is really the fear of not having lived. When people are dying, they rarely regret the risks they took or the mistakes they made. They regret the risks they didn't take, the words they didn't say, the love they didn't express, the dreams they didn't pursue. They regret the time they wasted waiting for permission, waiting for the right moment, waiting for fear to go away. But fear doesn't go away. Uncertainty doesn't disappear. The perfect moment never arrives. Life is messy, unpredictable, often difficult. The choice is not between a life with challenges and a life without them. The choice is between a life lived fully despite the challenges and a life lived cautiously in an attempt to avoid them. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Confine yourself to the present." Not because the present is always pleasant, but because it's the only place where you have any agency. You cannot change the past. no matter how much you think about it. You cannot control the future, no matter how much you plan for it. But you can choose how to be present in this moment, and that choice shapes everything. When you're fully present, you notice things you would otherwise miss. The way someone's eyes light up when they talk about something they love. The feeling of your body moving through space. The intricate patterns of light and shadow around you. The subtle emotions moving through your inner landscape. The profound mystery of consciousness itself. The fact that you exist, that you're aware, that you can experience beauty and meaning and connection. These observations might seem small, but they're actually enormous. They're the building blocks of a life well lived. A life well lived is not necessarily a life of great achievements or dramatic events. It's a life of great presence, great attention, great appreciation for what is actually here. Seneca wrote, "Life is long enough if you know how to use it." The question is not whether you have enough time. The question is whether you're using the time you have in a way that honors its preciousness. Are you spending your days on what matters most to you? Are you present for the people you love? Are you engaged with your work in a way that feels meaningful? Are you taking care of your body, your mind, your spirit? Are you contributing something positive to the world? These are not questions with easy answers. They require ongoing reflection, ongoing choice, ongoing commitment. They require you to regularly examine how you're spending your time and whether that spending aligns with your deepest values. They require you to say no to things that don't serve your highest purpose, even when saying no is difficult. They require you to say yes to things that matter, even when saying yes is scary. The ancient practice of Memento Mori was not meant to make people morbid or depressed. It was meant to make them alive. When you remember that your time is limited, you stop taking it for granted. When you remember that this day might be your last, you approach it with reverence. When you remember that the people you love are mortal, you see them more clearly, love them more fully, appreciate them more deeply. This doesn't mean living in constant anxiety about death. It means living with constant gratitude for life. It means waking up each morning with a sense of wonder that you get another day, another chance to experience consciousness, another opportunity to love and create and contribute. It means going to sleep each night with a sense of completion, knowing that if this were your last day, you lived it well. The modern world encourages us to live as if we were immortal. We make plans decades into the future. We accumulate possessions as if we could take them with us. We postpone happiness as if it were guaranteed to be available later. We treat our bodies as if they were machines that will run forever. We take our relationships for granted, as if they were permanent fixtures rather than temporary gifts. But what if we lived as if we were mortal? What if we made decisions based on the understanding that our time is finite? What if we prioritized presence over productivity, connection over achievement, meaning over status? What if we stopped waiting for someday and started living today? This is not about becoming reckless or impulsive. It's about becoming intentional. It's about choosing how to spend your time based on what matters most to you, rather than on what others expect of you or what society tells you should matter. It's about being present for your own life instead of sleepwalking through it. Epictetus taught that we are like actors in a play. We don't get to choose the role we're given, but we can choose how to play that role. You didn't choose to be born, and you won't choose when to die, but you can choose how to live the life between those 2 points. You can choose to be present or absent, engaged or distracted, grateful or resentful, loving or fearful. Every moment offers you this choice. This moment, right now, as you listen to these words, you can choose to be fully here, fully present, fully alive, or you can let your mind wander to your to-do list, your worries, your plans, your regrets. The choice is always yours, and it's always available. The Stoics believed that philosophy was not an academic exercise, but a way of life. It was meant to be practical, applicable, transformative. The goal was not to understand abstract concepts, but to live better, to suffer less, to contribute more, to die well. They understood that wisdom without application is just intellectual entertainment. So the question becomes, how will you apply this understanding to your life? How will you live differently, knowing that your time is finite? How will you prioritize differently? How will you love differently? How will you work differently? How will you be present differently? These are not questions to answer once and then forget. They are questions to live with, to return to regularly, to let guide your choices and shape your days. They are questions that can transform, not just how you think about life, but how you actually live it. The clock is still ticking. It started when you were born, and it will stop when you die. Between now and then, you have a choice about how to spend the time you've been given. You can spend it waiting for life to begin, or you can recognize that life has already begun and is happening right now. You can spend it distracted and absent, or you can spend it present and engaged. You can spend it on what doesn't matter, or you can spend it on what matters most. The ancient Romans ended their letters with the phrase Memento Mori. Remember, you must die. But perhaps a better ending would be Memento Vivere. Remember, you must live. Remember that you are alive right now, in this moment, with this breath, with this heartbeat. Remember that this moment will never come again. Remember that your time is precious precisely because it is limited. Remember that you are running out of time. And let that remembering wake you up to the life you still have left to live.